Good morning, guys. MWUSA Season 4, Episode 7. And this episode is actually a replay of an episode, but I think it's an important one. And it's a game that I want to look more into because I do think that there is a possibility that this game can be beaten. This episode was actually released in Season 1. And I think some things have changed a little bit, but overall it's pretty accurate. So without further ado, I want to give you free bet and how to beat free bet, or is it beatable? Alright guys, MWUSA here, episode 126. We're going to be talking about free bet today, and I've had to re-record portions of this because this game is a little bit odd and a little bit unusual, and I was thrown off by this game a few times here. So obviously I've never played this game. When it first came out, I was very skeptical of the game, and for good reason. Obviously, the house wants you to believe that you have better odds, and you do have bigger swings, but definitely not better odds in the long run. So let's talk about this game. It's a variant of blackjack. It's called free bet blackjack officially, and it was invented by Jeff Hall, and it made its debut at the Golden Nugget in June of 2012. So the rules for this game are: it is played with 6 decks, although playing it with 8 decks is actually better for the player. That's why the casinos opt for 6 decks. Otherwise, they would do 8 decks because it's less shuffling, harder to count, and so on. Well, not harder to count, but it's more stable of a game, and you don't get as many opportunities generally as the lower number of decks. So the dealer hits on soft 17 in this game, like most blackjack games, and blackjack pays 3-2, so that's a positive at least. Now you can double after split for free, and you can split for free in this game, but you can only double on the first 2 cards if you have a 9, 10, or 11 for your first 2 cards. If your total for the first 2 is 9, 10, 11, you can get a free double, and you can resplit up to 4 hands, including aces, which is unusual in a lot of places in the country. About 60% of the games I play, you cannot resplit aces, and in this game you cannot surrender. So let's get right into it. And the free doubles, as they're called, are only again on hard totals of 9, 10, and 11. And regular doubles are still allowed. You can still use your own money to double ace 4, ace 5, whatever you want, ace 7, ace 6. That's okay. But as far as a free double, it's 9, 10, 11 only. And they will put a little button out that says free bet on it. Instead of cash or chips or whatever, it's actually a button that says free bet. Then if you win the hand, you will get paid on your original bet and the same amount again for the free bet portion. So that's the way the free double portion of it works. Now you also have free splits, and you can split anything: 2s, 4s, 6s, 7s, 9s, except 10s. So you cannot split 10s with the free split. Obviously, you can still split 10s, and obviously if you know card counting, you understand that when you split 10s, lots of times it'll bring heat on you, but in this case, you can split anything else with for free except for 10s. So that is the free split portion of it, and you can split up to 4 hands, and we're going to talk about that basic strategy in a minute. Now, the downside to this game is that dealer wins on all hands that they beat you, as always, and you lose on all your bust hands. But if the dealer has a total of 22, the dealer will not bust. Your wager is a push. So let's say I had just a regular hard 18, and the dealer gets a 22. My bet is a push. The dealer doesn't take anything. If I have a hard 18 and the dealer ends up with a 17, I win. Obviously I win, and if I bust, I'm going to bust. So the only difference is that it's a push on 18 or on a 22 for the dealer. And if the dealer has that free bet button out for you, obviously you get to keep your original bet. You don't get anything additional for the free bet portion at all. So basic strategy for a regular blackjack game is similar to a free bet game. There are some differences. Obviously 9s, 10s, and 11s, you want to do the free bet no matter what the dealer has, which obviously is a difference to a normal game. If you have a 5 and 4 against a 10, you're normally not going to double. You're not going to double, actually. I don't know of what situation it would have to be for you to double. So 9s, 10s, 11s, you're always going to double down in this game. Now, since you can't surrender, in those cases, of course, you're going to be hitting. Generally, you're surrendering around 15, 16 in that range, depending on the true count that you've got going on. But in this case, since you can't, you're going to hit the hand instead. Now, in the case of a 17 against an ace, you can't surrender, and you're going to be standing instead. Now, moving on to the free bet differences. Other differences are you're going to take the free bet portion on any hand that you can, as far as pairs, 2s all the way through aces, except for 5s and 10s. So by rule, you're not going to split 10s. You're not going to split 10s because you're not allowed to by rule. And you are allowed to take the free split on 5s, but we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to opt for the free double on 5s. So everything else except for 5s and 10s, you're going to do the free split, and then you can move on from there and do your doubles and other things if you want to. Now let's talk about house edge. Depending on the games around the country, you're going to have house edges generally between, for me, I see mainly like 0.3 something to 0.4 something generally. There are a few games that are as low as like 0.14, but generally those are also going to be 8-deck games. They're going to be tighter casinos lots of times. I remember going to trying to remember Tampa, I believe, the Hard Rock in Tampa, and they had the best, as far as odds of winning, they had the best odds. But of course I get there and they're so strict, and if you don't have ID, you can only bet 10 times the minimum, and they're standing over you, watching you with their arms crossed, watching every move that you make. And it was a bit of a circus in there, so I definitely would not go back there to play blackjack unrated, although it was an enormous casino, and now I would play slots there. But I digress here. Let's get back to what I was talking about. So the house edges, generally 0.3, 0.4, 0.5 around the country, and this one has a house edge of 1.04. Now I know that there are some variations, and I'm not going to talk about a million variations here, but if you get the variation that has a free double with 3 or more cards as well, that adds 0.66 to the player, which good luck finding that. Dealer stand on soft 17, 0.31 for the player. Late surrender, 0.21 for the player. And then the other advantage would be if they used 8 decks, but it's only 0.01 advantage. Think about how greedy they are. Instead of giving the player a 1.03 house edge, they give them a 1.04 house edge, and they will shuffle basically 33% more often than using 8 decks. because they don't want to give up that 0.01%. Crazy. Now, if you get a variation that is no resplit aces, it's a negative 0.08, and no resplits on pairs of fours, minus 0.27, and there's some other ones. The main one other than that is going to be no 3 to 2. They would pay 6 to 5, which is a minus 1.36. Get the heck out of there if you see that one. You definitely don't want to mess with that. So then there are some variations as far as side bet. So there's a side bet called Pot of Gold associated with this game, and there are a couple different players. A couple different variations of the Pot of Gold variation side bet, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But as with most side bets, we know we want to probably stay away from most of those. But is it a possibility of some kind of an edge for us? Let's talk about that. Okay, so let's talk about this side bet and examine it. The way that this side bet works is, this side bet is called Pot of Gold, and it's based on the number of free bet tokens that a player gets per hand. So your initial hand, if you're playing two hands, obviously it's two separate bets and you can't add these two together. But let's say you get an 11 and you take the free bet and you get that little token that says free bet on there. That's one free bet token. If you split, you're getting a token. Resplit, get another token. Resplit, get another token. Double, 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 double would be the max, which would be 7 tokens. So if that makes sense, every time you are using that free bet option, you're getting a token. So the pay structure, the main pay structure that I'm going to talk about is, of course, between 0 and 7, because 0 is the lowest possible and 7 is the highest possible. And the odds of getting 0 tokens is 83.34%. So, more than eight times out of 10, you're going to have that almost 17 times out of 20. So 17 times out of 20 almost, you're going to have a win of minus 1 unit, because you put 1 unit out, and that 83% of the time you're not going to win anything, so you're going to have that loss. So then you have 16.658% or so exactly of the bets remaining. That 16% is going to be broken down this way. If you get only 1 token, you're going to get 3 to 1. So that happens generally 14.8% of the time. And so if it's happening 14.8% of the time, let's do the math here in our head. Twice would be 30%. So about 1 in 7 times, it's paying 3 to 1. You already see the problem here. So if you get 2 tokens, that happens about 1.3% of the time. So you're talking about almost, let's say 90 to 1 odds of that happening. It's paying 10 to 1. And then 3 tokens, 0.3%, it's going to pay you 30 to 1. And 4 tokens, it's going to be 0.08%, and it's going to pay you 6 to 1. And 5 tokens, well, of course I missed my turn here, so let me just fix this real quick. So going on to 5 tokens, the odds of hitting that are 1/100th%, and it's going to pay 100 to 1. And then it gets really astronomical. The odds of getting 6 tokens are 2/1000th%. It pays 300 to 1. And the odds of getting the max, which is 7 tokens, are 2/10,000th%, and you get 1,000 to 1. So generally, with this side bet, if you add everything up and you do millions of hands, millions of simulations, you're going to end up with a player loss of 5.76, about 5.77%. So even worse than you would expect. Now there is a different pay chart, which I'm not going to go through. It's very similar, but basically The top three pay 100 to 1 instead of 100, 300, and 1,000 to 1. But the difference is at the bottom, the 2 tokens pays 12 to 1 instead of 10, and the 4 tokens pays 60 to 1 instead of 50 to 1. So those are the differences there. Obviously, you can try to design some kind of a counting system for this, or I haven't seen a counting system that worked. I have seen people who have simulated it, and I talked to one recently on BJA, and he estimates it has to be like in the 20s, plus 20s or minus 20s for it to make a difference. And of course, that's going to be so rare, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Obviously, you want counting systems that are going to be usable and that you're going to be able to make money off, instead of counting systems that are so rarely hit. It's hardly worth your effort to do it. So that gives you an idea of this game, and it's an interesting game because it lures people in because of the possibility of getting so many free bets. And like I said earlier, what that does is it gives more swings. So you're going to have more people excited and jumping up and down about how they put out a $100 bet and they won $600 or $500 on a bet because they split and doubled and did all those things. But generally, if you're smart, if you do the analytics on it, you're going to realize that this is a terrible game. I knew right away that it would be a very difficult game to beat. Instantly, it reminded me of those charity things that you would go to where blackjack is played. A lot of churches would do it, and the house would win on a push. And that gave me a flashback to that. I was never old enough to play those, and since I was old enough to play at those charities, I haven't, but I have heard about that. Maybe I played it once now that I think about it, but I flashed back to those days of the church beating people up for their money, and then people saying, well, it's for the school, it's for the church, or whatever, but it's definitely not something that you want to play. So I hope this gives you a good idea about what goes on with this game, and if there's anything further you want me to add, just let me know. I doubt that there's going to be anything that I would add to it, but I hope it was interesting to you and you learned something, and hopefully you won't play the game. If you have any questions or comments, it's mwusa21 at gmail.com, mwusa21 at gmail.com.